For 9 years, he believed his father abandoned him. The truth was far more dangerous. His father was a boss in Seoul's most ruthless clan, and sending his pregnant wife across the ocean was the only way to keep them alive. Now, his son is 9 years old, standing in the rain outside a locked gate, with a name and an address he wasn't ever supposed to find. The man inside is Kim Jun-ho, a name that commands fear across Seoul's underworld. His wife, Jae, fled to America with their unborn child a decade ago, carrying a story of abandonment to sell their safety. Their son, Leo, has just learned his real name. What he doesn't know is that his search has triggered a silent alarm, and two rival clans are now watching that gate. 10 years ago, the Park clan's rise to power was written in blood. Their leader, Park D1, made a vow to erase the Kim line entirely. Junho's marriage to Jae, the daughter of a disgraced ally, made her a perfect target. The only way to protect her was to make her disappear. So he staged a brutal, public argument and had her forcibly removed from the country, leaving her with nothing but hatred for him and a story to tell. In Los Angeles, Jae built a new life on that story. She told Leo his father was a cruel man who wanted nothing to do with them. She worked 2 jobs, kept their address unlisted, and changed their last name. But she kept one box, hidden in a storage unit paid for in cash every year. Inside were a faded photo, a pair of tiny gold baby shoes, and a sealed letter with a single instruction: do not open until his 18th birthday. Leo was a quiet boy who noticed everything. He noticed his mother flinch at Korean news reports. He noticed she never dated. He noticed the recurring charge on her bank statement for a storage unit she never visited. 2 months ago, on the eve of his 9th birthday, he asked the question she'd dreaded: what was he really like? That night, while she slept, he found the key. The contents of that box shattered his world. The photo showed a man who looked like an older version of himself, smiling, his arm around a pregnant Jae in front of a cherry blossom tree. The letter was not from his father. It was from his father's most trusted lieutenant, Min-soo. It detailed the entire ruse, the Park clan's threat, the planned separation, a bank account number, and a final line: when it is safe, he will find you. If he does not, it is because he is gone. Forgive him. Leo didn't just find an address. He found a mission. Using the bank account details, which still received small, untraceable deposits, he traced a digital footprint to a corporate shell in Seoul, a shell owned by the Hansong Foundation. With the relentless focus of a child who believes he can fix a broken thing, he scoured satellite images until he found the compound matching the description in Min-soo's letter. He saved his allowance for a plane ticket. He told his mother he was going on a school camping trip, and he boarded a flight to Seoul with a backpack, the photo, and a desperate hope. But inside the compound, the system built to protect him was already flashing red. Min-soo, now Junho's head of security, monitored a network of digital tripwires. One was the storage unit payment. Another was a quiet alert from a genealogy website Leo had used in his search. The moment the boy's flight landed, Min-soo knew. He stood now in Junho's study, watching the live feed from the gate camera. The boss had his back to the screen, pouring a drink. "Sir," Min-soo said, "the perimeter alert, it's the boy." Junho didn't turn. "What boy?" "Your son." The glass stopped halfway to Junho's lips. He turned, and for the first time in a decade, he saw him. The image was grainy, rain-streaked, but undeniable. His wife's eyes, his own jawline. The disbelief on Junho's face was absolute, followed by a tidal wave of terror. This was the one eventuality his plan could not survive. Because the Parks had not gone away. They had grown stronger, more embedded in the legitimate economy, and more patient. Park D1's son, Seung-hwan, now ran their operations with a cold, corporate precision. He had long suspected Junho's sacrifice was a feint. The boy's appearance was the proof he'd been waiting for, a living, breathing vulnerability. Across the city, in a sleek high-rise office, Seung-hwan received the same alert. A mole inside Junho's security team had forwarded the gate camera still. He smiled, a thin, joyless stretch of the lips. "The heir has come home," he said to his assistant. "Let's send a welcome party." Back at the gate, Leo shifted his weight from foot to foot, the rain soaking through his backpack. He reached a small hand through the iron bars and pressed the intercom button. Inside the study, the buzzer sounded, sharp and invasive. Jun-ho looked from his son's face on the monitor to the live feed of him at the gate. The two images, side by side, presented an impossible choice. Answer the gate, and he lights a beacon for every enemy who ever wondered if he had a weakness. Turn his son away, and he breaks the boy's heart to save his life, just as he did a decade ago. Min-soo watched his boss's face, seeing the calculation war with a raw, unfamiliar pain. The Parks will know within the hour, Min-soo said quietly, if they don't already. Jun-ho's hand hovered over the intercom switch. Every second of delay was a risk. Every second was a lifetime. He made his choice. He pressed the button to speak. The voice that came through the speaker wasn't the cold command Leo expected. It was calm, gentle, and spoke in perfect English. Step back from the gate, Leo. Look to your left, by the old stone planter. There is a smaller door. It's unlocked. Come inside quickly. The hidden door swung inward on silent hinges. Leo stepped into a garden, and the main gate closed behind him with a heavy thud. Min-soo was there, a large umbrella held over the boy. Come with me, Leo. Don't be afraid. He led him not to the main house, but to a side entrance, down a flight of stairs, and into a secure basement apartment, a safe room Jun-ho had built for a family he never thought would use it. Upstairs, Jun-ho watched their progress on a monitor, his hands clenched. Then he turned to a bank of other screens, switching views to the perimeter. Two black sedans had just pulled to a stop down the street. The Park's welcome party had arrived. Inside the safe room, Leo stared at the man who entered. He was taller in person, and the sadness in his eyes was nothing like the smiling man in the photo. You came a long way, Jun-ho said, kneeling to be at eye level. You look like your mother. The dam broke. 9 years of questions, confusion, and longing tumbled out. Why did you leave us? Why did you make her hate you? The letter said you had to, but why? Jun-ho listened, letting the storm pass. Then he told him the truth, stripped of the legend. He showed him news archives on a tablet, articles about the gang wars, the murder of his own brother, the Park clan's public vow to eliminate his bloodline. He explained the terrible calculus. A visible family was a target. A hated, abandoned family might be left alone. Your mother's anger was her armor, Jun-ho said, his voice rough. My distance was your shield. Every day you were safe was a day I won. But as he spoke, Min-soo received an alert on his earpiece. He leaned in and whispered, they're at the gate. They're demanding a meeting, citing a breach of territorial respect. The Parks weren't attacking. They were invoking an old, formal protocol, a request for parley. It was more dangerous. It meant they were operating within the rules of their world, and a refusal would be an act of war. Jun-ho looked at his son, who was absorbing the horrific reality of his family's history. The shield had just shattered. Down the street, Seung-hwan Park waited in the lead sedan. He knew the boy was inside. His demand was simple: hand over the unauthorized visitor for questioning about border security. It was a pretext, but a legalistic one in their underworld. If Jun-ho refused, Seung-hwan would have grounds to mobilize other clans who valued the old codes. If he complied, he was giving them his son. Jun-ho made a third choice. He sent Min-soo to the gate with a counteroffer. He would meet Seung-hwan in a neutral location, alone, in 2 hours. It was a stalling tactic, but it worked. The sedans pulled away. They had 48 hours of tense peace. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, Jae had discovered Leo's note and the empty storage unit. Panic turned to icy dread. She knew exactly where he had gone. She booked the next flight to Seoul, but not before making one call to a contact from her old life, a journalist who had once investigated the Kim clan. If I don't call you in 24 hours, she told him, publish everything I just sent you. The file contained copies of Min-soo's letter, the bank records, and her own testimony. The clock was now ticking on 3 fronts: the Park clan's deadline, Jae's arrival, and a potential public exposé that would blow up the delicate, hidden world both clans operated in. Back in the safe room, Jun-ho faced his son's next question. What do we do now? Leo asked, his bravado gone, replaced by the fear of a child who finally understands the monsters are real. We get your mother, Jun-ho said, and then we end this. But his plan was already in motion. He contacted a retired judge, a man who owed his life to Jun-ho's father. He activated a long-dormant protocol, a formal petition for clan arbitration, a nearly mythical process where elders would adjudicate the feud. It was a Hail Mary, requiring the Parks to stand down until the hearing. The price for invoking it: each clan leader had to offer a hostage as a guarantee of good faith. Seung Hwan laughed when he received the scroll. It was delivered by a trembling courier. He hadn't seen this ancient law used in his lifetime, but the elders still existed, and they remembered the old ways. To refuse would make him an outlaw to every traditionalist. He agreed on one condition: the Kim clan's hostage would be the boy. The message was clear: give me your son, or prove you don't trust the very system you invoked. It was a masterstroke, boxing Junho into an impossible corner. The arbitration hearing was set for 72 hours later. The hostage exchange would happen at dawn. That night, Junho sat with Leo in the safe room and explained the cruel game. If I give you to them, even as a hostage, I am trusting snakes to guard a treasure. If I refuse, I break the ancient peace and give Seung Hwan permission to burn everything down. Leo, who had been drawing on a notepad, looked up. What if they get the wrong boy? He asked. Junho stared at him. What do you mean? I have a friend from soccer camp. His name is Leo too. He looks kind of like me. He said he always wanted to go to Korea. The casual, childish logic was devastating. Leo was proposing a deku. It was monstrous. It was ingenious. It was the only card they had left to play. Junho's heart broke at the ruthless strategy blooming in his son's eyes, a strategy he himself had passed down through blood and circumstance. The protected boy was becoming a tactician. The plan was set in motion, a dangerous gamble involving bribes, a convincing double, and a flight out for the real Leo and his mother. But as Minsu worked the phones to arrange the switch, a new alert flashed. Jai's flight had landed, and she wasn't heading to the compound. She was being followed from the airport by a car that wasn't theirs. The Parks had found her first. The game had just changed, and the hostage was no longer the only piece in play. The car tailing Jai didn't attempt a violent grab. It gently forced her taxi to the curb. The window rolled down, and the man inside was not a thug. It was Park Seung-hwan himself. He offered a polite, chilling smile. "Mrs. Kim, welcome home. We need to talk about your son's future." Jai froze. This was the man whose family had vowed to end hers. His courtesy was more terrifying than violence. She was escorted not to a dark warehouse, but to a luxurious hotel suite overlooking the city. Seung-hwan played the gracious host. He knew everything about Leo's trip, the safe room, even the DK plan. "Your husband is sentimental," he said, pouring her tea. "He thinks with his heart. It's his greatest weakness." His proposal was simple, and it had nothing to do with hostages. He wanted her to make a public statement, to go before the clan elders at the arbitration and testify that Junho had indeed abandoned her, that the story of protection was a lie he invented to save face. In return, Seung-hwan would guarantee Leo's safety and financial future. He would be raised away from the life with a new identity. "You wanted him to have a normal life," Seung-hwan said. "I am offering you the only way to achieve it. Discredit the father, and the son is free." It was a psychological masterstroke. He was asking her to weaponize her own genuine pain, the very anger that had protected them for a decade, to destroy Junho's honor and claim to leadership. If she refused, Leo would remain a target forever, caught between two warring clans. If she agreed, she would become the instrument of her husband's final ruin. Back at the compound, the mood turned to panic when Jai's tracker stopped moving at the Grand Imperial Hotel, a known Park holding. Junho's carefully constructed plans, the DK, the arbitration came crashing down. The Parks had the queen. They were no longer playing for the pawn. Leo, watching his father's face turn to stone, understood. They have mom. It wasn't a question. The tactical lesson was over. The visceral terror of a child for his parent took over. "We have to get her, now." But Minsu delivered worse news. The soccer camp friend's family, the intended DKs, had been approached. A generous scholarship had been offered to send their son abroad immediately. The Parks had neatly removed the substitute from the board. The hostage exchange at dawn was now a direct, inescapable trap. Give up the real Leo, or violate the arbitration before it even began. Junho was outmaneuvered on every front. He looked at his son, then at the monitor showing the hotel. Two hearts, both held hostage. He made a desperate call. He contacted the retired judge and requested an emergency pre-hearing. He would meet Seung Hwan alone at a neutral site in 1 hour. It was a gambit with no leverage, a plea from a position of staggering weakness. The meeting place was the closed tear room of a centuries-old temple. Seung Hwan arrived with two elders as silent witnesses. Junho came alone. For the first time in 10 years, the two clan leaders sat face to face without an army between them. "You have my wife," Junho stated. "I have offered her a choice," Seung Hwan corrected. "A better future for her child, free of your shadow. She is considering it." He slid a tablet across the table. On it was a live feed of the hotel suite. Jae sat by the window, staring out, her posture rigid with tension. "She doesn't look like a prisoner. She looks like a woman thinking." Junho's composure, his infamous control, fissured. "Name your price, for her safety, for the boy." Seung Hwan leaned forward. "I don't want money. I want your legitimacy. Withdraw the arbitration. Publicly renounce your claim to the Eastern Docks. Dissolve your enforcement arm. You will become a businessman, nothing more. Do this, and your wife walks out. The boy goes with her back to America, and this feud ends with your generation." It was a demand for surrender, not a negotiation. It would mean the effective end of the Kim clan as a power. Junho would be keeping his family alive by sacrificing the legacy of his father and brother and the livelihood of every man who had been loyal to him. The elders watched, their faces unreadable. "And if I refuse?" Junho asked, his voice deadly quiet. "Then we proceed to arbitration," Seung Hwan said, smiling, "where your wife will testify against you, where your emotional unfitness will be documented, where you will lose anyway, but with the whole world watching your humiliation. And then, accidents happen, to disgraced men, to their families." The choice was surrender or destruction. There was no third option. Junho left the temple with the decision hanging over him. He had until the formal hearing at dawn, but he didn't return to the compound. He went to a small, forgotten cemetery on the city's edge, to his brother's grave. Min-soo, shadowing him, watched from the car as his boss stood in the rain, speaking to a headstone. When Junho returned, his expression had changed. The despair was gone, burned away by a cold, clear resolve. "The decal is off," he told Min-soo. "Prepare Leo for the exchange." Min-soo was horrified. "Sir, you can't." "I am not giving them my son," Junho interrupted, his eyes like flint. "I am giving them a message." He explained. He would take Leo to the hostage transfer point, but he would also activate Operation Phoenix, a contingency plan known only to him and Min-soo. It involved liquidating the clan's entire war chest, millions in crypto and gold, and dispersing it to the families of his men. It was the preparation for a scorched earth last stand. When Leo was told he was to be the hostage, he didn't cry. He nodded, a terrifying maturity in his young eyes. "Will it get Mom back?" "It's the only move that might," Junho said, tying his son's shoes with a double knot, a silent echo of a life not lived. But as they prepared to leave, Jae was making her own move in the gilded cage. Seung Hwan had made one mistake. He'd left her alone with a tablet to review the evidence against Junho. On it, she found not just fabricated documents, but real ones, internal Park clan communications showing their plan to seize the docks and launder money through a new port authority. She also found a chat log. It detailed the order to have her followed from the airport. And the name of the man who gave the order wasn't Seung Hwan. It was one of the silent elders from the temple meeting. The arbitration was a sham. The elders weren't neutral, they were bought. The entire process was a Park-engineered theater to legitimize Junho's destruction. Her testimony was meant to be the final, believable piece. She couldn't send the files, the tablet was locked, but she could make a call. One number was pre-programmed, the direct line to Seung Hwan's office. She called it. When he answered, she said only, "I'll do it, I'll testify, but I want to see my son first. Bring him to me tonight. Let me explain it to him myself. No child should hear this from strangers." She was gambling that a show of maternal care would appeal to his sense of narrative. He agreed. The hostage handover would now happen at the hotel, under his control, hours before the dawn arbitration. It was the perfect trap from his perspective. He would have both mother and son, and her coerced testimony would be flawless. The alert came to Junho's car just as they were pulling out of the compound. The location had changed to the Grand Imperial. Junho understood instantly. This was no longer an exchange. This was a consolidation. Seung-Hwan was gathering all the pieces for his endgame. He looked at Leo in the backseat. The plan has changed again. He then did something he had never done. He explained the full, brutal truth to his 9-year-old son about the corrupt elders, the setup, his mother's dangerous play. When we get there, Junho said, you must go to your mother. No matter what you see, no matter what you hear, you get to her and you stay with her. What are you going to do? Leo asked. Junho's phone buzzed. A single word text from Min-soo, now positioned elsewhere. Ready. I'm going to give Mr. Park what he wants, Junho said, his voice devoid of all emotion. A final confrontation. The black sedan pulled into the glittering drive of the Grand Imperial Hotel. The lobby was deserted, cleared by Park security. Elevators opened directly to the penthouse suite. The doors closed behind Junho and Leo, and they began to ascend, the numbers ticking upward toward a reunion, a decade in the making, and a battle neither man could walk away from. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. The penthouse was not a battlefield of guns, but of documents. Park Seung-Hwan stood by the window, a sheaf of papers in hand. Jae was seated nearby, her eyes locking with Leo's the moment the doors opened. But she didn't run to him. She gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of her head. Wait. You brought him, Seung-Hwan said, smiling. Good. The family is together for the signing. Junho walked forward, placing himself between Seung-Hwan and his family. There will be no signing. The arbitration is corrupted. You own the elders. Seung-Hwan's smile didn't falter. Proof is such a tedious concept. Perception, however, is everything. Your wife is here to tell a story. The world will believe her. He gestured to Jae. Tell him you're going to tell the truth. Jae stood. Her voice was steady, clear. The truth is that you sent us away. The truth is that you let me hate you for 10 years to keep us safe. She looked at Seung-Hwan. And the truth is that this man found that love and tried to turn it into a weapon. He thought my anger was stronger than my memory. She walked to the tablet on the table and tapped the screen. The room's large television flickered to life. It showed the damning Park clan documents she'd found, the plans for the docks, the chat logs with the elder. Then it switched to a live feed. It was Min-soo, standing in a wood-paneled study facing 3 very old, very grim-looking men. The true elders, the ones not on Seung-Hwan's payroll. The evidence has been submitted, Min-soo's voice came through the speaker. The pre-meeting of the full council is convened. Park Seung-Hwan, you are summoned to answer for subverting the ancient law. Seung-Hwan's composure cracked. He hadn't bought all the elders. He'd only bought the 2 on the visible panel. The deeper, retired council had been alerted by Junho's visit to his brother's grave, a signal to an old ally. Operation Phoenix wasn't just about money. It was about calling in every last favor from a lifetime. You lose, Junho said quietly. Not by force, but by fraud. The law you tried to use will now break you. But Seung-Hwan was not a man who accepted checkmate. His hand moved to his jacket. In that moment, Leo did something instinctive and fearless. He didn't run to his mother. He ran to his father, putting himself directly in the line of any potential threat. No, he shouted, not in fear, but in command. That single, childish act of protection changed the entire chemistry of the room. Jae moved at the same time, not away from the threat, but toward her son. The park guards hesitated, their hands on their weapons, but their eyes on their boss, uncertain. Seung-Hwan looked at the boy shielding his father, at the wife moving to shield her son, at the man who had sacrificed everything for them. He saw the thing he could never buy, never manipulate, and never understand, a family that would die for each other. His hands slowly came away from his jacket, empty. He had lost the narrative. Violence now would only make martyrs. Get out, Seung-Hwan said, his voice hollow. Take your tragic little family and get out of my hotel. They left under the watchful eyes of the park guards, but no one stopped them. The real battle would move to the Elders' Council, a war of documents and discredit that would take months. But the human war, the one for their lives, was over. In the car, a silence heavier than any conflict descended. Jae looked at Junho, really looked at him, for the first time in a decade. She saw the lines of grief, the weariness, the man who had lived alone in a fortress of his own making. He looked at her and saw the strength that had raised their son, the anger that had been her fuel, and the love that had never actually died. Leo sat between them, holding one of each of their hands. He didn't speak, he just held on. They did not go back to the compound. That chapter was closed. They went to a safe house, a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood that Min-soo had prepared. For the first night in 10 years, the Kim family slept under one roof. They did not talk about the past. They did not make plans for the future. They simply were. In the weeks that followed, the Elders' Council ruled. The two corrupted elders were expelled. The Park clan was stripped of its claim to the eastern docks and fined a staggering sum, crippling their expansion. Seung Hwan retained leadership, but his authority was forever weakened. The arbitration, invoked in bad faith, resulted in a permanent truce enforced by the elders. The blood feud was declared ended. Junho kept his word from the temple. He formally dissolved the clan's enforcement operations. The Kim organization became exactly what Seung Hwan had demanded, a legitimate business. The funds from Operation Phoenix were distributed to the families of his men, not as a war chest, but as severance and seed money for new lives. Some stayed with the new company, many others left, free of the life. And then Junho did the one thing no one expected. He resigned. He handed the reins of the legitimate business to a board headed by Min-soo. His final act as a boss was to dismantle his own throne. The press reported it as a wealthy tycoon retiring early to spend time with his recently reunited family. Only a handful knew the truth of the war that had made that reunion possible. The final surprising detail came 6 months later, on Leo's 10th birthday. They were living in a house by the sea, not in Korea and not in America, but in a neutral country. A package arrived with no return address. Inside was a small, beautifully crafted wooden box. Inside that box was a single polished stone and a folded note. The note read, "A son should not have to fight his father's wars. A father should not have to mourn a son he never knew. The account is settled. S." The stone was from the river that ran behind the temple where they'd had their final meeting. It was Park Seung-hwan's signature. It was not an apology, it was an acknowledgement, a statement that the ledger was closed. It was the closest thing to peace they would ever get from him. That night, Junho told Leo the whole story from the beginning, with no shields and no simplifications. Jae listened, her hand in her husband, finally hearing the parts she never knew. The fear, the loneliness, the daily weight of the choice he'd made. Leo listened intently. At the end, he asked, was it worth it, all of it? Junho looked at his wife, then at his son. Every second, he said. The boy who had crossed an ocean to find a villain found a father instead. The father who had sent his heart away to save it found it returned to him. And the wife who had built a life on a lie of hatred found she had a foundation of love to rebuild upon. Their story wasn't a fairy tale, it was a ceasefire. It was a garden growing in cracked earth. It was a family, fractured and remade, standing together in the quiet after the storm. This story asks a difficult question. What does it mean to protect someone? Is it holding them close or letting them go? For Kim Junho, the answer was both, separated by a decade of silence. His choice mirrors a painful reality far beyond the underworld. From state interventions removing children from mafia families in Italy to the wrenching decisions made in war zones and refugee crises, the calculus of protective separation is a tragic constant. It is the unthinkable choice made to avoid the unsurvivable one. The science is clear. Such separations are traumatic, leaving lasting psychological scars. But sometimes, the alternative is no life at all. Leo's journey, from a boy believing he was abandoned to one who uncovered a sacrifice, highlights a profound human truth. The search for origin is a search for self. Whether in adoption, foster care, or fractured families, that drive to understand where we come from is a powerful force, one that can bridge oceans and dismantle walls built for safety. The Kim family's ceasefire is not a perfect, happy ending. It is a negotiated peace. It is a father learning to be present, a mother reconciling two truths, and a boy carrying the weight of a legacy he never asked for. They are building a new life on a foundation of old wounds, which is the hardest and most honest kind of rebuilding there is. It reminds us that the stories we are told about our lives are often shields, and that love, in its most absolute form, can look an awful lot like leaving, but it also looks like a double-knotted shoe, a note about a beetle, a stone sent from a rival closing a ledger. We leave them there by the sea, a family remade, not because the past is forgotten, but because they have chosen a future together. If this story moved you, if it made you think of someone or something in your own life, we want to hear about it. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what protection means to you. And if you believe in stories that challenge the easy villain, that find the humanity in the hardest choices, then help us tell more of them. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who needs to see that even in the darkest circumstances, a different ending is possible. Thank you for watching and for being part of our story.